So on today's YouTube video, we're going to be doing things a little bit different, and we're going to run over some tips and advice on how to build a HMO portfolio. So you can go out and learn it yourself, or as the followers will know, we're a family-run development business which offer a service to investors that want to build a portfolio, whether that be in HMOs or buy-to-lets. So in today's video, we're going to be running over, if you wanted to do it all by yourself, some tips that will help you along your journey for the HMO side. So let's go. The first tip while we're on a site visit is your strategy. So you've got to decide what strategy you want to do, whether it's going to be social, young professionals, which that's probably 100% of what we work on, but then also people do HMOs for student accommodation as well. We've not particularly done that just because of when we come into the game. Manchester was very populated with purpose-built student accommodation and already established HMOs, plus Article 4 is in them areas. So we only really work in PD areas. So that's tip one, is strategy, which links on to tip two, which is location. Follow me to the next location and we'll go through it. So the tip two, while we're on the way to the next project, because we're doing a rounds on Friday to top up on top content, but the next tip is location. So depending on what strategy you want to do will depend on what location you're looking at. So it can be, is that turning? No, next one. It can be different things. For example, if you're doing student accommodation, do you want to be in a town that's not got a university? No, which is obviously that's a very basic one. Also with private and young professionals, you want to make sure that there's actually demand in the area, especially with a lot of HMOs going around everywhere. Are some particular areas oversaturated? What sort of product are you bringing to the market? Because if you're just going to do tiny rooms with shared bathrooms, are people really going to are people going to come and rent that property? Who knows? But then also you have social, which again links to, are the council in need in that area? Sometimes, even though the council are always in need of housing, no matter what they say, sometimes just to get on top of things, if they have a large influx of properties, certain councils, CICs, will hold off on onboarding new properties just while they get on top of things. So yeah, location is a massive one, but then also you want the value at the end of the house, at the end of the build. So if you get a crap house in a crap area and you do all bells and whistles, or it's a little bit out of town, not really got any links for public transport, no parking. Parking's not a massive one, but if it's got no like main links to the main cities and it's just maybe in a little village, are people going to be travelling out that far for a room? Probably not. So once you pick your strategy, you need to pick your location that will go nicely with that strategy, and then you can go on to tip three, which is finding and analysing your deals. So there's no point doing all your market research on what type of property you want, and then you go looking for properties that aren't big enough. So what you need to do is you need to find what you want to fit in the property. So are you going to go for a 4-bed? Are you going to go for a 5-bed? Are you going to go for a 6-bed and beyond? So you need to decide what you're going to do for how many bedrooms you can fit in that property, but then also, is there need for that in this specific area? Some areas that we work in, for example, for social housing, we know that bigger properties, the social housing don't really want them, because it's easier for them to control a smaller HMO. So you wouldn't go and try and find a 16, 17 bed in areas where you know that particular information. Or you wouldn't go and do a 4-bed private market where they're all sharing the same bedroom in an area where you'll be able to get the rents for a nice sized bedroom, potentially a small kitchenette, so it's a bit of a mini studio, and then also with communal areas. This is a project that we're doing for a client currently. They found this project themselves, but look at the size of it. So this is going to be a kitchen communal area. All this. What a find. And it's in a perfect location, and it's going to be a private market. So again, it needs to be a top spec. So that links onto our next tip. So the next tip is like a joint, which is going to be funding your deal / finance, but then also analysing the deal as well. Because what trips a lot of people up is they find a deal, they're happy with the purchase price, they're happy with what they're going to try and put in there, whether it be a 5-bed, 6-bed, whatever, but then they budget the build wrong. They either miss things or they don't have enough, so then it just ruins the deal. So many deals fall through because they've not budgeted properly. Two reasons. Two different ways that it can ruin the deal is, obviously, you can leave as much money in the deal as you want. If you're doing it cash, you can technically pay whatever you want because it's your cash. But if you're using finance, or if you actually want to do property investment properly, you obviously want to make a certain percentage on rather your money left in the deal, or if you're flipping, you want to obviously get your money out and make profit that you want to make. So the build costs is one of the biggest things that can mess up a build. So for example, this property was at a tight budget, not the tightest, but decent budget, but not the biggest. And then, like, for example, in the attic, if you look on one of our Instagram videos, I show you what's happened to the chimney, which again, no one would have known that that's happened until we've ripped out. Luckily, it will get sorted, but that could kill somebody's budget on the deal, especially on the tighter deals. Other things like plastering. Do you have to plaster the whole house? Do you not have to plaster the whole house? Do you need a new kitchen? I would always advise a new kitchen, but sometimes if the deal's going to fall through because if you can save a deal by not putting a new kitchen in, why would you not do that? So yeah, financing and analysing go hand in hand, and then especially if you are using bridging finance, they're going to scrutinise your figures as well. And then also, if you're getting your build funded, then you've only got a set amount for the build. So make sure you speak to a builder, make sure the price is knuckled in, but then also make sure that that builder is competent, because what they will do, and what we've heard a lot in the industry, like everybody would have, is a builder comes, all smiles and says, yeah, we can do this for 50 grand, for example, and he's 30 grand cheaper than everybody else, which will be a red flag anyway. But then also, when he gets on site, he knows that he's going to be hitting you with extras, because he's going to give you a scope which doesn't include this and doesn't include that and doesn't include this. So then at the end of it, you're more or less going to probably end up paying more than you would if you just went to a builder that's more competent, more transparent, and on day one you think, oh no, I'm paying a bit more, but in the long run, sorry, technical issue there, but yeah, competent builders are worth the weight in gold, like us, competent builders. So yeah, because that can ruin your deal. So that's why, again, link back to what we actually do, is we work with investors to make sure their deals get done. But then also, we'll give you input, whether you find the deal yourself and bring it to us to build, or you want us to do the whole package, we'll analyse it with you. Even when we're on site, if we can think of something that might be better for the build, we'll suggest that in the build. And if you want to do it, win-win. If you don't have to. So yeah, competent builders is number one, because then we've not even gone into going over on time as well, because it happens to everybody. The thing about the building trade is trades are the most unreliable people on the planet. So it even happens to us, but we always plan that into the schedule. People delay, materials might not come on time, people forget things, trades don't show up and never show up. Sometimes trades drop out. It happened to us on another project 2 weeks ago. The plumber was due to come. He was like, oh, sorry, I'm delayed. So by this point, we're 4 days in to the plumber should have started first fix. Then he turns around and says, sorry guys, I've got a big contract elsewhere. I'm not going to be able to fulfill it. how you're supposed to imagine that happening. You can't. But if your schedule's correct and your builder's competent, then they'll have buffers in place where hopefully the end time is not going to be affected, because that's not your problem as a client, but we'll still have enough time to be able to get back on programme and finish by the end. Because we've been there. We've been late on projects, because that's how you learn. You learn from mistakes. So yeah, forgot where I was at, but the next tip is licensing. So with licensing, I went on a bit of a tangent then, by the way, so I actually covered on the last one, I covered finance and build teams, schedules. I covered quite a lot there because I went off on a tangent, but next one's licensing. So like I mentioned previously about HMOs, if you're in an Article 4 area, it's a completely different kettle of fish for if you're in a non-Article 4 area. Reason being is non-Article 4 areas, you can get it done within permitted development rights, but then you can get it done within permitted development rights, so you don't need planning. If you need planning, you have to put a full planning application in, which is time, which that's not a deal killer, but it just means you've got to preempt that. But then also on the other side of it is usually when you do a planning application on a property, you would get a subject to offer, or sometimes you might buy it out, but it's risky. But if you get a subject to offer, usually when we're doing HMOs, people are selling the homes, so they don't want to do subject to offers because the market is the market. So with permitted development rights, you buy a house and then you just convert it. So people are going to go more towards that, because a subject to explain what it is you put an offer on a house, a commercial building, piece of land, and it will be subject to you getting planning. So then what that does is it saves you buying an asset, the planning falling through, and then you've lost the money and you have to resell the asset. So instead what you'd do is you'd offer them, say, 100k for whatever asset it is, and then it would be 100k subject to you getting planning. So then with the vendor, you can do the planning application on that particular property, and then if your planning gets granted, then you pay your 100,000. If the planning doesn't get granted, then you've only lost your planning application money, and obviously surveys and all the rest of it. I went off a tangent again. So licensing. You need to make sure that you can, licensing / planning, you need to make sure that either you need planning or you don't need planning, because then you can go down that route. Licensing is, you need to make sure that when you're doing the build, space standards, where it is all within board, above board, to get a HMO license at the end of it. Because the last thing you want to do is go all the way through licensing and then you don't manage to get a license at the end, because then you've just done all that for nothing. So yeah, licensing is very, very important. And I think that's it. I'm gonna have to rewatch all these videos and see if I've missed anything. But if it's not, that's everything. So go out there and find HMOs. Bye bye.